Mommy! I heard my daughter's voice, filled with surprise and panic. In response, I desperately tried to hang on to my fading consciousness, but all my efforts were futile, and I fainted right in front of my daughter. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, after having been rushed to the ER. My daughter was there, clutching my hand tightly, refusing to let go. I must have given her quite a scare. I was filled with guilt, about to apologize when she spoke before I could.
Mommy, the baby in your tummy says they don't want to get erased by Daddy.
At her mysterious words, I held my breath in surprise. My name is Linda Williams. I'm a 27-year-old homemaker living with my husband Mark, who is 2 years my senior, and my 4-year-old daughter, Sarah. I used to work as a sports trainer until recently when I had to quit. The reason? I'm expecting our second child. I really didn't want to quit, but after my pregnancy was discovered, I started feeling unwell more often and had no choice but to leave. I was depressed after quitting a job I loved, but there were also good aspects. Up until then, Mark wasn't very helpful with housework or child raising, but he started taking the initiative for my sake. I'm worried about my health, but I'm glad that Mark is changing. At that time, I thought everything would be okay.
Mommy, wake up! It's morning.
When I woke up to Sarah's innocent voice, it was 7 a.m. The school bus for Sarah's daycare arrives at 7:30 a.m. I jumped up in a hurry. Shoot, Sarah, we need to get ready quickly.
What's wrong?
We overslept. If we don't hurry, the bus will be here. While rushing my confused Sarah and leaving the room, I realized that I hadn't seen Mark anywhere. He usually leaves around 7:15 a.m., so he should still be at home. Maybe he's downstairs. Maybe he's having breakfast. Although a little annoyed that he didn't check on us, I headed for the stairs. That's when it happened. I slipped, and I felt a momentary sensation of being thrown into the air. I'm going to fall! Instinctively reaching out for the handrail, I managed to grab onto it and prevent myself from tumbling down the stairs. Oh, that was close. I put my hand on my stomach immediately, but I didn't hit it, and it doesn't hurt. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Sarah, looking pale, rushed over.
Mommy, are you okay?
I'm fine, honey. Sorry for scaring you. Regaining my footing, I embraced Sarah. Then, Mark, who must have noticed the commotion, rushed over from downstairs. What happened? I slipped and almost fell down the stairs. Whoa, be careful. I'm sorry, but it was like the floor was slippery. What? And the floor seems to be cleaner than usual. I hadn't noticed until now, but the wooden floor in the hallway was sparkling, as if someone had polished it. Then Mark said in a flustered manner, Oh, right. I waxed the floor last night. Wax? Why would you do that all of a sudden? I noticed it while cleaning the floor, but I guess I got a little too excited. I'm sorry. Oh, I see. I was surprised by the idea of him waxing the floor, which was something he had never done before. But he had been doing a lot of housework recently, so perhaps he had started noticing the little things. Once men start paying attention to details, they just can't stop, can they? Even though I found it a bit strange, I decided not to worry about it. A few days later, on a Sunday, Mark had to go to holiday work, so I decided to take Sarah to the park, just the two of us. Before, I would run around and play with Sarah, but I can't do that now. I watched Sarah playing on the swing. A water bottle Mark had prepared for me in hand. Who would have thought that Mark would start preparing things like water bottle for me? When Sarah was first born, Mark was so uninterested in anything to do with the house. It still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. He also had no interest in Sarah. So every time I say something to him, he gets grumpy. And coming home from work became later and later. The fact that he now prepares a bottle of water for me is still a shock. But I can't hide how happy it makes me. Thinking about this, and feeling a bit thirsty. I decided to take a sip of the tea Mark had prepared for me. Then,
Mommy?
After drinking about a quarter of the bottle, I suddenly felt dizzy and began to feel unstable on my feet. I grabbed onto the fence of the swing for support, but even then I could feel my strength fading, and it became increasingly difficult to stand.
Mommy, what's wrong? Mommy?
Hearing Sarah's surprised and worried voice, I desperately tried to hold on to my fading consciousness. If I faint here, I'll leave Sarah alone. But even with this thought, I fell right there while protecting my stomach. When I came to, the first thing that hit my eyes was a stark white ceiling. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was, but then I noticed the smell of disinfectant and the figure of a nurse appearing saying, "Are you all right?" I realized then that I was in a hospital. At the same time, I thought of Sarah. "Excuse me, Sarah, do you know where my daughter is? She should have been with me when I fainted." I sat up and asked the nurse. She said, "Ah," and seemed to understand immediately. Maybe trying to reassure me, she smiled at me. "She came to the hospital in an ambulance with you. She should be with your husband now." "My husband?" "He left work early to come here. He arrived a little while ago. He's such a caring husband." The nurse said that she would go and call them, and then left the room. Feeling relieved that Sarah was not alone, my head started to spin again, and I collapsed on the bed. Why? When there was no issue during my previous prenatal checkups? Was it because I moved around too much? Or did I eat something bad? As these thoughts spun around in my head, I suddenly remembered the tea from the water bottle that I had drank just before I fainted. Come to think of it, that tea. Just as I thought about this, the door opened, and the nurse, a doctor, Mark, and Sarah came in.
Mommy!
"Sarah, I'm glad. I'm sorry for leaving you alone."
I'm okay, but what about Mommy? Are you okay, Mommy?
"Yeah, I'm all right now." As I patted the head of Sarah, who had rushed over to me, the doctor smiled next to me. In the end, it was decided that I would be hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. After a thorough examination by the doctor and the nurse, they left the room. Mark said, "I'll go buy a drink," and he also left. In the hospital room, it was just me and Sarah. Then, Sarah seemed a bit restless and looked like she wanted to say something. "What's up, Sarah?"
Mommy, can you keep a secret from Daddy?
"Huh? Okay, but why?" Although I was wondering why, I nodded in agreement, and Sarah brought her face closer to me with a serious look.
The baby is saying that they don't want to get erased by Daddy.
"Huh?" I was momentarily speechless, unable to understand what Sarah was saying. Sarah then pursed her lips in dissatisfaction and spoke a little louder.
The baby is saying Daddy's being mean, and the tea in the water bottle.
At these words, I was taken aback, because I too had sensed an unusual bitterness in the tea from the water bottle. At the time of drinking, I thought maybe Mark had bought a different type of tea than usual and didn't give it much thought. But thinking about it now, I was hit by a terrible dizziness just after drinking that tea. I had a slight feeling somewhere in my heart that there might be some relation to the fainting incident. But what does it mean by the baby saying, "Hey, Sarah, I'm sorry I'm late. The cafeteria was crowded." Just as I was about to ask Sarah properly, Mark came back into the room. I swallowed my words in surprise, and Sarah seemed uncomfortable and buried her face in the bed. Mark looked at her with a puzzled expression. "Something happened?" "No, it's nothing." Well, whatever. I'm going home for today. I have to work tomorrow. Just rest up, okay?" Mark took Sarah's hand and left, but my daughter showed a momentary reluctance to leave. "Let's go home with Daddy today. Mommy is staying at the hospital."
Okay.
I can't help but feel uneasy about my daughter, who followed him without saying anything. I wonder if Sarah is okay. I was worried, but there was nothing I could do at the moment. I just had to make sure I could be discharged as soon as possible and crawled into bed. But I couldn't fall asleep easily, as Sarah's puzzling words kept coming to my mind. 3 days later, I was allowed to discharge. As my husband was working, my friend Kimberly came to pick me up. Kimberly was a friend from the same gym I worked at. She has been looking after me since I quit due to my health condition. I was shocked to hear you had fainted, but you seem to be doing much better than I thought. I've been sleeping so well in the hospital that I feel much better. I'm glad. I was worried because you're pregnant. While having such a conversation in the car heading home, I felt a bit uneasy inside. I have been constantly feeling sluggish and heavy-headed, but the discomfort improved in just a few days. The only unusual things I had done during that time were taking a break from housework and childcare and eating a balanced diet in the hospital. Upon thinking that, I suddenly realized something. So that means I didn't eat Mark's cooking yesterday. I remembered there had been several oddities since Mark started doing housework. Aside from almost slipping on the wax, there were other things that bothered me. For instance, things were placed in spots where they usually aren't, causing me to trip. Or the time I was told the shower was ready, but it turned out that the hot water tank was empty and cold water came out. Such incidents occurred frequently, especially when cold water came out. I rushed to the hospital out of concern for the baby in my belly, as it was in the winter. Fortunately, there were no problems, but it was a really nerve-wracking event. Of course, I thought these were just mistakes due to Mark's inexperience with housework. However, reconsidering now, each of them seemed to be something that could lead to irreversible consequences if one step was wrong. Linda, we're here. Yeah. Before I knew it, we'd arrived at the house. Seeing my silence, she looked at me with worry. If you're feeling sick, you should say so, okay? Yeah, I will. Well, you should rest for today at least. I'll pick up Sarah, okay? Thank you, I appreciate it. As we got out of the car together, I thought to myself that I should talk to Sarah properly once she's back. In the evening, Sarah returned home with Kimberly. She even bought some deli food for dinner and said, "Call me if anything happens," before leaving. She was like a superhero. I silently jumped for joy in my mind. Having dinner with the deli food that Kimberly bought, I felt unusually well, so I decided to talk to Sarah again. "Can we talk a bit more about the other day?" I asked, and Sarah nodded seriously. "Can you talk to the baby in my belly, Sarah?" "Yes," Sarah nodded firmly. It was hard to believe, but I felt that there was no falsehood in her words. "Then can you tell me again what the baby is saying?" "Well, the baby is scared of Daddy." "Why?" "Daddy is trying to hurt us on purpose and separate Mommy and the baby. So the baby is clinging to Mommy with all his might." I was at a loss for words at this revelation. Her words, though clumsy, connected the dots I'd been feeling. Everything that felt off might have been deliberately planned to harm the baby. Feeling this, I shivered. "Mommy, what's wrong? Are you in pain?" "Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm okay." Seeing Sarah's tearful face, I hastily embraced my little girl. And I made a decision, in secret. I have to find solid evidence, or no one will believe this. The next day, after watching my husband leave for work, I pulled something out of the back of the closet. It was a baby monitor we used when Sarah was an infant. If this reveals what he's doing, if it showed what I feared. The thought was so frightening, but if it showed nothing, that would be okay too. With a small hope in my heart, I hid the camera behind a houseplant. Then, a few days later, I mustered up the courage to check it. I can't believe this. It's too awful. What was captured there was something unimaginable, enough to shatter my small hope. And then I made up my mind. I absolutely won't forgive this. A week or so had passed since I saw the footage. I left my daughter, Sarah, at my parents' home earlier in the day. Then, I tidied up the entire house and prepared a perfect dinner before Mark came home. Mark, who finally came home, was surprised to see the lavish meal set on the table.
What's going on? I could have made dinner.
I can't let you do anything dangerous anymore.
Huh? What? What do you mean?
I didn't miss the flash of caution in his eyes. I mean exactly what I said. What have you been feeding your pregnant wife all this time?
I don't get it at all.
My health has improved significantly since I stopped eating your cooking for the past week.
What's that supposed to mean?
I had pretended to eat my husband's cooking and threw them all away. When I told this to my husband, he was slightly shaken. Also, when I checked around the house, I noticed the non-slip pad under the rug was missing, and the anti-tip device on the bookshelf next to the bed was removed. I got goosebumps when I found these. These weren't just targeted at our baby. It implied I was also a target. When I glanced at Mark, his mouth was twitching as he tried to force a smile. Now that I think about it, there was a time when body wash had spilled on the bathroom floor after shower, and things fell from shelves. If I'd fallen and hit my stomach, it would have been a disaster.
Those are just coincidences, right? Maybe I just made a little mistake.
I thought so too, until I saw this. I thrust my phone in front of his face, and when I played the footage recorded on the baby monitor, there was Mark talking on the phone with someone, and his voice was clearly recorded.
I get it, but it's not going as planned. It's surprisingly hard to make a person disappear in an accident. Well, two people. It would be best if the baby in the belly could disappear too.
Those words from the video sent chills down my spine no matter how many times I hear them. Watching Mark, he was shaking minutely and trembling in silence. Despite being wary, I continued to speak. The person on the phone is a woman, isn't it? Once I'm gone, you were talking about doing this and that. Things too disgusting to even mention.
That's bullshit. You're spying on me like this? I'll sue you.
How dare you? Do you even understand what you've done?
Shut up. Just shut up.
No longer able to find excuses, Mark, his face bright red, lost control and lashed out at me. Instinctively, I hunched over to protect my stomach. Just as I did, a loud bang sounded, and the next moment, I heard Mark scream. "Landa, are you okay?" "Kimberly, thank you." I looked over with relief to find Kimberly, who easily subdued Mark and was laughing. In fact, she's a strong woman who has won the national wrestling tournament multiple times. For the day, I had asked Kimberly to stand by in the next room just in case. Mark, pinned down by Kimberly, was already reddening his face and bellowing.
You think you're alive because of who? Me, right? Yet annoying demands to play with the kids and help with housework. If you all would just disappear, I could live freely. Just get lost for my sake, you idiot.
So that's what you think. But thank you.
Huh?
Actually, you just helped me a lot by self-destructing. Saying so, I thrust my phone, which was in call mode, in front of Mark. The call was to 911. Actually, it had been in this state for a little while before, so all of Mark's words had gone straight through to the police.
Please, not the cops.
Mark was struggling to escape, but Kimberly had him firmly pinned down and he couldn't move.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please, I apologize, forgive me.
That's not something you can get away with just by apologizing. What you were about to do?
Don't say such things.
While Mark was thrashing around, the sound of several footsteps and a voice saying,
"We're coming in,"
echoed, and the police officers entered through the door that was already unlocked. And in no time, Mark was taken away. Even on his way, Mark was pathetically clinging to me and pleading like, "Help me." A subsequent investigation revealed the plan by Mark and his mistress. The objective was to eliminate me, who was in their way, so they could be together. Even if they failed to get rid of me, they were contemplating a story that the loss of our child due to my carelessness would lead to divorce. Moreover, if they could blame it on me, they thought they could claim compensation at the time of divorce. The sheer audacity of it all leaves me speechless. But even now, when I think about what could have happened, if I hadn't noticed anything, it still sends chills down my spine.
Mommy, the baby is happy. She says she can always be by your side.
When I went to pick up Sarah, she said that right away. Yes, I'm so glad. It's all thanks to you. I thanked my daughter from the bottom of my heart, and tears of relief flowed.
Mommy, why are you crying? The baby is looking forward to meeting you. I'm also very excited.
About a month after Mark's arrest, our divorce was finalized. And a few months later from that, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sarah is overjoyed at her sister's birth and has now become a very reliable big sister.
If you have a problem with anything, get out of my house, anytime. Right now, I'm being verbally abused by my sister-in-law in my own house, a house that's in my name. I gave her every chance in the world, and she just trampled all over my kindness. I won't show mercy to such a person any longer. I'll make her pay for her actions and make her regret everything she's done. My name is Emma, a 29-year-old housewife. I had been living happily with my husband John, whom I married 2 years ago. My father-in-law passed away before we got married, and 6 months ago, my mother-in-law slipped on the stairs of her apartment and broke her leg. The injury left her with a lingering numbness, and it became difficult for her to continue living as she used to. Given these circumstances, she started living with John and me. The house we live in was passed down to me by my father. My dad loves to travel, and he even bought a motorhome. He left the house he'd been living in to me and started a life in his motorhome with my mother. I decided to take advantage of my father's kindness and began living in the house he'd given me. Now, considering the care for my mother-in-law, I'm glad I accepted the house from my father. Emma, I'm sorry for moving in and needing your care, my mother-in-law said. It's okay, mother-in-law. Please, don't worry about it, I responded. From the first time we met, I liked my mother-in-law because she always maintained a healthy distance. That's why when she got injured and my husband suggested she move in with us, I could accept it without hesitation. Then, one day, a storm blew into our peaceful life. The doorbell rang while I was in the middle of cleaning the house. Yes, who is it? When I opened the front door, there stood my husband's sister, Jessica. Hey there, Emma! Long time no see! Oh, Jessica? Don't be so surprised. We're sister-in-laws after all. Well, about that sister-in-law thing. To be honest, I've never really been fond of my husband's sister, Jessica. She had been living with her husband for quite some time before John and I got married. She recently had a baby, but she demanded a hefty baby gift from my mother-in-law and never let us meet her grandchild. Not to mention, she was utterly selfish at our wedding. This food is awful! Totally killed my mood. She had no problem loudly complaining about everything. When my mother-in-law got injured, she dumped everything onto John, saying, "You're the older brother, aren't you? You should take care of this." She didn't even come to check on my mother-in-law. And of course, she was just as disrespectful to me, saying things like, "So, you're Emma, huh? You're kind of plain." The first time we met. I can never forget the shock of that day. Jessica always has something unnecessary to say, and that's why I never had a good impression of her. When she showed up unannounced that day, I had a bad feeling about it. "Jessica, what brought you here?" I asked. In response to my question, my sister-in-law Jessica shrugged her shoulders rather exaggeratedly. "Well, you see, I'm a little strapped for cash right now. Could you lend me $1,000? No, make that $2,000? What? $2,000? That's too much. I hurriedly retorted, but Jessica showed no sign of backing down. In fact, she even aggressively asked for $1,000. Should I just lend her the money and get her to leave as quickly as possible? A fleeting thought crossed my mind, but given Jessica's personality, once I lent her the money, I knew I wouldn't get it back. I decided to firmly refuse. No matter how much you ask, I can't. I'm sorry. We have our own lives to live. At that, Jessica's mood worsened abruptly. Just give me the money. How dare you defy your sister-in-law? Just as I thought she had shouted enough, she suddenly pushed me on my shoulder, causing me to fall on my rear. Looking down at me, Jessica smirked and extended her hand. Come on, lend me the money now. That made me really mad. Can't do. Please leave. I forcibly ejected Jessica and locked the door. Hey, open up. Are you listening to me? Jessica shouted from the porch. Reacting to her voice, my mother-in-law handled it for me through the door. If you're going to make any more noise, I'm calling the police. Jessica instantly quieted down, stating, Fine, I'll be back, before she left that day. After confirming Jessica's departure, my mother-in-law apologized to me. Emma, I am really sorry. My daughter caused you so much trouble. Mother, it's okay. In the end, I didn't lend her any money. But still, I'm truly sorry. It must have been unpleasant for you. My mother-in-law seemed to feel a lot of guilt, and she kept apologizing. I couldn't help but wonder how such an arrogant daughter could have come from such a humble mother. When my husband, John, came home that night, I told him everything that had happened. Upon hearing the story, his face turned beet red with anger. What the? That's too much of a nuisance. Emma, I'm really sorry. I don't even know how to apologize. My husband bowed his head to me. Seeing this, my mother-in-law once again apologized. And so, the day ended with an incredibly awkward dinner. The next day, the intercom rang again. Through the door, I could hear Jessica's cloying voice. Emma, darling, please. I won't do anything weird anymore. Just lend me the money and I'll leave right away. Oh boy, 2 days in a row? Even I was taken aback. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law was out, so I was home alone. I cautiously opened the door with the chain on, and Jessica peeked in with great enthusiasm through the gap. Oh good! You opened it! So, about yesterday... Jessica, like I said before, I can't lend you money. At my preemptive strike, Jessica frowned for a moment, but then quickly began to feign tears. But if things continue like this, I'll starve to death with my daughter. Starve to death? What do you mean? I'm in debt to my husband. Sensing that I had taken the bait, my sister-in-law Jessica immediately responded. Because of these debts, I can't even live properly. I don't even have anything to eat for tomorrow. Do you understand how I feel? Really? Are you kidding me? Who does she think would sympathize with such a cheesy sob story? Does she expect me to say, "Oh, that's tough. Let me lend you some money"? While I felt like pointing out the absurdity of her claim, I responded calmly. I understand you're going through a hard time, but we have our own lives to live. I'm sorry. Upon hearing this, Jessica instantly stopped her sobbing act, and her face twisted into an angry scowl. What? You're just gonna abandon me in my time of need? Seeing this conversation was going nowhere, I quietly closed the door. Jessica was still ranting and raving at the front door. After a while, my mother-in-law returned from her day service. You! Are you causing trouble again? I told you I'd call the police, didn't I? At my mother-in-law's stern words, Jessica hastily made her exit. Emma, I'm sorry you had to deal with all this while I was away. My mother-in-law apologized, looking sorry. I cheerfully replied, "Oh, don't worry about it. I kept that chain on the door today. Plus, you returned just in time, so that was a relief." That night, the three of us, my husband John included, were all talking about Jessica. "Next time she comes, you don't have to answer. She'll only take advantage if we keep dealing with her." Upon hearing my husband's words, I decided to ignore Jessica from then on. A few days later, after a period of silence, Jessica returned to our house. Ignoring the incessantly ringing doorbell, I suddenly heard a loud "Ah!" from afar. It clearly wasn't Jessica's voice. Was that a baby crying? Both my mother-in-law and I exchanged glances. Cautiously opening the door, we saw Jessica holding her daughter. "Wait, Jessica, what's happening?" "Yeah, what's the big idea bringing a child here all of a sudden?" My mother-in-law and I were in complete panic. Ignoring our shock, Jessica began to explain. "So, here's the thing. I just got divorced from my husband. I have nowhere else to go, so I thought I'd stay at your house for a while." "Wait, you're planning to stay here?" My mother-in-law and I were left speechless. Living with such a nuisance is not a joke. However, we couldn't abandon a crying baby right in front of us. My mother-in-law felt the same, and understandably so, as this was her long-awaited first grandchild. "Hey, it's okay, right? I can do household chores and help care for Mom." Jessica, whining like a child. After exchanging glances with my mother-in-law, I sighed deeply. "Fine, if it's just for a few days." And so, we ended up taking in Jessica and her child. "So, I'll be intruding from now on." Saying that, Jessica strode into the house. My husband John, who just got back from work, was utterly stunned. Why is Jessica here?" "Well, it's a long story." "No kidding." Even my husband, who was furious, seemed completely defeated by the little baby. "When you calm down, can you please find a job and look for a house?" After saying that to his sister, he left the room. But there was no way that Jessica would help around the house. She only spent her days lounging around, watching TV. Furthermore, she dumped the responsibility of taking care of her child onto me and my mother-in-law, living completely as a NEET. Jessica, could you go shopping for us?" If I even dared to ask that, she would completely refuse. "Excuse me? Why should I? Isn't that your job, Emma, the housewife?" "Could you at least clean the house, then?" "Stop bothering me! Don't order your sister-in-law!" This was how our exchanges always went. My mother-in-law and husband had tried to reprimand her several times, but she showed no signs of remorse. Moreover, she used her own daughter as leverage, saying, "Do you want to drive me and my daughter out? Are you okay with us starving?" I, reaching the end of my patience, vented my frustrations about Jessica. "Enough is enough! We only let you live here because you said you would help with the housework. If you're not going to do anything, then please leave this house." Jessica looked surprised for a moment, but then sneered. "Excuse me? Aren't you the one living here off my brother's income? As a mere housewife, living off my brother's hard-earned money. How dare you tell me to leave? If you have a problem, why don't you be the one to leave this house?" She doesn't get it. This house was a precious gift that I received from my father. If I back down now, it'll be exactly what she wants. I have to fight back. This house was passed down to me from my father, meaning it's under my name, Jessica. You have no right to tell me anything. So what? Jessica looked down on me and said, "You're going to drive out a mother with a 10-month-old child? If you can, do it, you heartless woman." At that moment, the emotions I had been suppressing exploded. I've reached my limit. I'll make her regret ever looking down on me. I turned to face Jessica. Fine, I'll leave. Do whatever you want. What? Everyone in the room was taken aback. Jessica then started to smirk. Oh, really? Sorry about that. Well, a mother raising a child is more important than just a housewife like you. With a mocking tone, Jessica took her daughter and left the room. Hey, Emma, what was that all about? My husband, John, and my mother-in-law were shocked. To them, I revealed a plan I had been concocting. 2 weeks later, the day to execute the plan had come. Jessica, I'm leaving. Without taking her eyes off her phone, Jessica just shooed me away. Yeah, goodbye. Don't come back, okay? Then, John and my mother-in-law came in. We're leaving too. Huh? Jessica was caught off guard by John's statement. Wait, what does that mean? I thought only Emma was leaving. There's no way that's true. Both your mother and I are on Emma's side. We're cutting ties with such an unreasonable sister like you. What? How dare you? My mother-in-law also counters my husband. It seems like we made a mistake raising you. We sincerely apologize to Emma. We don't think of you as our daughter anymore. From now on, do as you please. Wait! Just hold on a sec. Are you just going to abandon me, Mom? You'll never see your grandchild again. Unfazed, Jessica's mother brushed her off. I don't care. All you ever did was demand baby gifts, and I never got to see my grandchild anyway. Please don't use me only when it suits you. No. Mom. Jessica's face gradually turns pale, but I have no intention of helping her now. I decided to give her a final, ultimate revenge. Oh, by the way, we're selling this house, so you should find a place to live by the end of the month. Sell? This house? Jessica is in a complete state of shock. Wait a second. You're joking, right? It's not easy finding a place to live. We don't care. We're moving. So, goodbye. Wait! Please, forgive me. I promise I won't complain anymore. Please, take me with you. Jessica was screaming and begging, but we ignored her. We took only the essential belongings, and John, his mother, and I moved to our new home. Jessica, left without a place to go, ended up living at her ex-husband's house. His debts are still accumulating, and now Jessica has no choice but to work part-time. If she had behaved decently in our house, none of this would have happened. Truly, she reaped what she sowed. However, there is a part of me that is grateful. Thanks to this, we were able to move to a wheelchair-accessible apartment. John's mother can now move around much more without any help. The security is also well established, so even if Jessica comes to visit in the future, we won't be bothered as we were before. John and his mother still feel guilty, but since we gave Jessica a taste of her own medicine, I'm not too bothered. Just being able to live happily with John and his mother is enough to make me feel blessed. From now on, I want to take care of those who care for me. I sincerely hope that the house we inherited from my father goes to someone wonderful.